We met first at my cousin Kate's wedding in 1957.
Yep, that's right. I recall that after I finished my undergraduate work at Yale, and I was applying to medical school, Western Reserve University was my first choice. And
the reason was that it was way out ahead in having the medical students each had a mother they followed. And
yeah, in your freshman year, before you had any experience with patients, you were thrown right in with a family with a young child, and it was something that you were sort of following their care with. But when my father knew that I was coming to Cleveland to medical school, he himself had been a physician, a general surgeon. But while my dad was at Yale, he played a lot of football, and then when he went to medical school at Yale, it was during his freshman and sophomore year in the afternoons, he would leave medical school and he would coach freshman football.
And guess who he coached?
And one of the people he was coaching was Ann's father. And so when Dad knew that I was coming to Cleveland to medical school, he said, be sure you look up Barney Crile. So I got to Cleveland and I called the Criles, and they said, well, come on up for dinner. So I came up for dinner. And so when I was eating at the Criles, Mrs. Crile, Jane Crile, Ann's mother, said it's too bad that Ann isn't here. She is teaching in Boston at the Charles River School. But she will be here in a couple of weeks for her cousin's wedding, and I think it would be very nice if you would chaperone her.
Chaperone.
And also I was invited out to the Knob here.
What did you think of the Knob when you first came out here?
It was just such a stunning place, because having grown up on a farm myself, it was just terrific. Yeah, it was showing really lots of wear and tear.
The main cabin where?
That was probably built because the elder Crile acquired this property, and I think it was in 1913. So, and it was shortly after that he built these cabins in that, and that building was really hard pressed. So we bit the bullet, and I said, why don't we just replace it? And
this was 1984.
Actually, it was built in 1987.
Okay.
No, actually 86 was when we had to get. See, I was possessed that if we were going to have something, it really had to be sturdy.
Yeah.
Absolutely had to be rock
like
solid.
The Egyptian pyramids.
And so I remember when I'd had an operation on my leg, and I was unable to operate, and so I had about 3 weeks off, and I remember riding around in my Ford Bronco, checking out to see if I could find barns or places where stones would be, and sure enough, we landed one. Not interestingly enough, only about 3/4 of a mile from here, and here was this lovely old barn, about to give it up, and lovely boards on it, and there were 183 of these giant sandstones that were the foundation. And so we negotiated, and we were able to purchase the barn.
For almost, when I think of it now, something
very reasonable.
$100. I don't remember, not very much.
That's not my memory.
Oh, wow.
So we began as a family dismantling this barn. We would take off all the boards, and then when we got down to the beams, we saved the beams, and now we were down to the stones. And I just, actually it was January of 1987 that I took a week and a half off from work, and with a local contractor, we moved 183 stones over to the Knob here with us. building is now. And the boards were a lot easier because we just had those on a truck and did the same thing with those. And then it was really quite exciting because it was Ann's uncle, who lived a few doors down from us, who was always fascinated by this place, and
He was an architect, a really wonderful architect.
he conceived the architectural plans, so we have something.
But he did it using all the material that
Yeah.
we had collected, including, I mean, even things like at the knob there was we didn't have a refrigerator. I mean, we didn't have electricity, but we had a literal ice box, and so we would just get ice to put in there to keep stuff cold. But we also took the doors of the ice box, and we used them in in front of the island. At the knob, there are the icebox doors.
Yeah. Well, and then
But he also went along with my idea. I really wanted some the biggest beams that I could possibly find to be part of this. And I had a friend that in Buffalo who said, well, if you really want big beams, you ought to go down, to where they head on the Niagara River, where Lake Erie empties into the Niagara River. And there they have this log boom. This log boom is there to keep the chunks of ice out of the Niagara River from going into the New York State turbines. And they're good for X number of years, and then they come on this big chain, they replace them with another one. So I ended up with one of my patients, and I rented
He happened to be a truck driver.
a semi, and I got my license to drive a tractor trailer again.
you wanted it.
And I kept. It was the hardest thing to negotiate, and finally I almost was on a first name basis with this woman. And one day I sent her some roses,
Yeah.
That clinched it.
and we got the timbers that had come off the boom, not the new ones. We wanted these that had the roof on it, and we got about 15 of those for, as I recall, for about $10 a piece.
Uh-huh.
So for $150, we had these gorgeous, enormous.
Douglas fir beams.
Yeah.
Besides the main cabin that used to be here, were there?
There were 5 little cabins that were originally, they were just tents. They started out as a little wooden platform with a tent, and my grandfather, I guess, covered them in with a little roof. And so they're just screened in. In the winter, snow is inches thick, but on the weekends we used to come out, and our children would bring friends, and everybody would go out into the woods with flashlights, and I think it was a little scary. And Essy and I were in our own cabin, and you were all alone.
And we would go down to the big rocks and we'd play capture the flag, and we'd swing by the vines, and we would. We'd be out there playing sometimes for 4 or 5 hours at a time,
Yeah.
just nonstop. So the last scene of Forks Over Knives takes place here at the Knob.
Right.
Did you have any idea when that was being filmed that, like, they were setting it up for this to be the last scene, or not?
No idea. No,
Really?
I mean, we had, we didn't know Brian Wendell. We didn't know. We just said, oh, okay, we'll do it. And it is simply incredible, the power that film has had. I mean, it's been one of the things that's made plant-based eating take off.
Yeah. But that last scene, you guys were all gathered around the Lazy Susan table that's still there today, but you had
And-
Colin and his wife.
And you know the coolest thing? This salad bowl. That was big, huge salad bowl. Everybody has always commented on the salad bowl, which is our salad bowl that's
Yep.
right there, and we still use it all the time.
But you had Anthony in,
Right.
Evelyn,
Colin was here.
basically everybody that was in
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
you had
Matt Letterman?
Matt
Letterman.
and Alona.
And Alona, yeah.
Yeah. But that was such a fantastic ending. to that.
And the wonderful voice of the film was, who was that? Silver. What was?
Oh yeah, that was Lee Fulkerson.
That's right.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah, he had a
But who?
Well, not only did he have a great voice, but he also told the story in such a
Yeah.
phenomenal way, and then he also himself had phenomenal results.
That's right. Well, it's interesting that, you know, you wonder the course you're going to follow in medicine and who influences you and so forth. And I had several strong influences, and once I got my career sort of going, one was my dad, and the other, of course, was your dad, Dr. Crile. Because the thing that was common about both of them, they were pioneers. I mean, my father, for instance, was the first one to develop a group practice in a rural community in upstate New York. And everybody had said that this would fail, but it was really a recognized experiment in how to reach people who had a minimal income with top physicians. And Dr. Crile, Ann's father, was really absolutely notorious for never taking anything for granted and willing to challenge just the most established principles. And really his absolute landmark contribution was that the standard radical mastectomy, which for 100 years had been a standardized surgical error, Dr. Crile, Barney really inspired enough interest in this that studies were done that clearly showed with operations that were much less mutilating, less disfiguring, less painful, could give us an equivalent result. And really, he did more to save women's breasts than anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he probably, I would imagine, helped inspire you, along with your father, obviously, to go against the status quo and to challenge everything that was kind of dogma at the time.
When you think about the fact that here we have the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization, which is cardiovascular disease, which we've known for over 100 years, there are multiple cultures on the planet Earth where cardiovascular disease is virtually non-existent.
But obviously, that seems very apparent. But why is that a truth that is so hard for so many people to see?
Change. The only person that really loves change is a newborn infant. Change is difficult, and especially it's difficult when it goes against everything you perhaps have learned, and also it's a challenge to learn something new. But really what has happened is that the ball is really starting to roll now. Mm-hmm. And it's, I don't think it'll be more than less than a decade before the power of whole food plant-based nutrition to eliminate chronic illnesses will be recognized.
That's fantastic. So that'll still be in your lifetime.
Who knows?
We'll see.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.